What's going on, guys? Mega Gig back with another video, back with another Diablo 3 build. And we are looking at today, we're looking at the Monk, we're looking at the Sunwuko build for the Wave of Light build, and more specifically the ranged Wave of Light build. Forgive this other crap here, I don't have any more storage space, and I don't have an extra storage slot unlocked yet from seasonal stuff. And Monk has kind of become a storage area in a way for me. Unfortunately, because, well, out of the main characters that I play him the least, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, this build I was testing on the PTR, and I had a lot better gear. It wasn't really better, it just had better sustain, it just had better stats. It wasn't really that great. And you guys can look at the video a while back that I did on the PTR. But we're going to go over the Sunwuko's Wave of Light build today. And this build is the top Monk build. I believe it's still the top. Let's just see here. That's not what I wanted, but sure. Yeah, Sunwuko's Wave of Light. So yeah. And it's pretty much what they're using. We're going to go over the build. We're going to go over the skills, all that kinds of stuff. We'll talk about different things. Even my gems are a little off because my toughness was pretty far off when I first kind of threw this together with what I had here, and I don't have any veiled crystals to reroll stuff. So you'll notice stats like seven-sided strike on here. Yeah, the gear is crap, but the build is the same regardless. This is the gear you're gonna want. We're gonna go over the gear, the skills, and then we'll do a Greater Rift run. Show you guys how it works. So first thing you're going to need is a Kirishiro's Blade. This increases the damage of Wave of Light by 150%. When the initial impact of Wave of Light hits 3 or fewer enemies, the damage is increased up to 250%. So regardless of how many you hit out here, the initial impact, if it hits 3 or less, you get the big damage bonus. The other weapon you're going to want is a Vengeful Wind. Increase the maximum stack count of Sweeping Wind by 7. This is going to allow us to have 10 full stacks of Sweeping Wind at all time, and that goes in really well with our 6-piece bonus. We'll go ahead and go over the set bonuses here. 2-piece bonus: whenever Sweeping Wind is active, your damage is reduced by 50%. Every second, for the 4-piece bonus, every second Sweeping Wind spawns a decoy next to the last enemy you hit that taunts nearby enemies and explodes for 1000% weapon damage for each stack of Sweeping Wind you have. And then the 6-piece set bonus: Slashing Tail Kick, Tempest Rush, and of course Wave of Light, which is what we're using here, have their damage increased by 1000% for each stack of Sweeping Wind you have. So 1000%, that's 10,000%. Now you do want to make sure you get this to 7. It can roll with 6, which is kind of a bummer. And that's actually what my PTR weapon was. But I do have one here that is 7. Even though it's not a good weapon, that is still the weapon you're going to want. You're also going to want the Crudest Boots. This way you will summon 2 Mystic Allies. And when you activate it, you gain, I believe you gain 200 Spirit as well when you activate it, because it's double. So yeah, you definitely want the Crudest Boots. For the belt, I have Kirishiro's Soul here. This isn't optimal anymore, and unfortunately I don't have a Witching Hour, but the Witching Hour belt is better in this case because it can roll critical hit damage and attack speed. I believe it can roll both of those stats, and that's just more damage all around. You don't really need the passive of this. Sweeping Wind gains 2 stacks every second, because you're going to be doing constant damage. You're going to constantly be critting and all that, and keeping this topped off in battle. For speed runs, this may come in handy, but actual optimal Greater Rift pushing, go for the Witching Hour more than likely. But this is all I have for this build, so this is what we're using here. You're also going to want Pinto's Pride. Wave of Light also slows enemies by 80% for 3 seconds and deals another additional up to 150% damage, so another multiplier on top of that. For the rings, we are using the Focus and Restraint for the just the Focus and Restraint benefits. Each time you hit hit an enemy with a resource generating attack, you deal 50% increased damage. And when you hit an enemy with a resource spending attack, you deal 50% increased damage. So you have to actually hit enemies to trigger them, which actually comes in very important, and we'll discuss that in the actual gameplay. And then the amulet, we're actually using part of Sunwuko's shines because we do need 5 pieces of this active. So the amulet, you're going to, this is pretty much set in stone. You're going to want the torso, hands, neck, legs, and shoulders because our Zo's Kryn's gaze wave of light is now cast at your enemy. You do want this as well. There's some different combinations out there that you can try where wave of light isn't ranged, but it doesn't really work. I did mess around with it a lot on the PTR, and it didn't really work, at least at the time. If somebody gets it to work, let me know. But I've got resist all and vitality gems in there because I don't really have that much health. But of course you can go with all resist all, or if you want damage you can go with dexterity, green gems. Of course we've got green gems in the stats here, and you can look, my critical hit damage isn't very high, nor is my critical hit chance, so that's one big thing that's holding me back. And I don't have any area damage on here either. So yeah, my stats are really bad on a lot of these items. Hardly any ancients other than my rings. In fact, might not have any ancients, yeah, other than my rings. So, so yeah, but that is the gear. For the gems, you're going to want to use the Bane of the Stricken. This build thrives on AoE damage. This build thrives on big groups, big density. So when you get to the Rift Guardian, especially if they don't have adds, you're going to want that stacking damage effect on this. So Bane of the Stricken is important, and as is Bane of the Trapped. Again, it's just a damage multiplier to all enemies that are under the effects of control impairing effects. And mine is only 42 on this guy. I didn't switch one out from another one. And then you're also going to want an Esoteric of Alteration. Gain 53% non-physical damage reduction. And then while below 50% life, all your resistances are increased by 75%. So that's actually going to stack really well with one of our skills that we're using. That is the gear. And that's going to stack super well with the Sixth Sense, which is a passive skill. We'll cover that in just a second. For your primary skill, we're using Crippling Wave. And I'm using the Rising Tide. Each enemy hit generates 2.5 additional spirit. Because my build isn't completely optimized, it is still very spirit heavy. And after I've run out of spirit and run out of Mystic Ally, and if it's not on cooldown reduction yet, we can build up a lot more spirit a lot quicker to start attacking with Wave of Light again using Rising Tide. If you're completely optimized, a lot of people are going with Tsunami to freeze enemies around you. Just kind of a nice crowd controlling effect added on that too. Really, you could almost go with any one of these that you wanted, any of these skills that you really preferred. But one of two things: either go with something that reduces damage, which Crippling Wave does. Crippling Wave, every third hit dazes enemies within 11 yards, slowing their movement speed by 30% and attack speed by 20%. So reduces damage by slowing their attack speed. But you're going to want definitely some kind of crowd control effect in there, or spirit generating effect. One of the two. Or, I mean, if you really wanted to, you could go with like a damaging effect, like Assimilation or something like that. But that's completely up to you. We're using Crippling Wave, Rising Tide here. Mystic Ally, Air Ally, this is pretty much stuck in place. You need it for the Spirit Regain. Sweeping Wind, Inner Storm. Obviously, you have to have this for the huge damage bonus to take effect of the 6-piece of our set bonus. So we're using Sweeping Wind, Inner Storm. As long as your Vortex is at 3 or more stacks, you gain 8 spirit per second. That's going to help you keep your spirits. It won't be topped off, but it'll help you keep more spirit more often. Our main damage dealer, we are going with Wave of Light, Explosive Light. Release bursts of energy that deal 830% weapon damage as fire to nearby enemies. There's a couple of different options here. You could go with Pillar of Ancients. I've seen that used recently. but I think Explosive Light's probably going to be your... this is going to deal more damage to a single target because you get the 635% and then the 785 over 3 seconds. But this is going to do a lot more AoE damage because of the pillars that go out. And so it's really kind of up to you, up to your play style. Feel free to try both. This one drops a pillar that continues to do damage. So if enemies are very, very grouped up, this is definitely good. And it's also pretty nice on, Rift Guardians and things like that that don't move around much. But we are going kind of with the meta here, and we're going with Explosive Light. We're also using Dashing Strike, Blinding Speed. This is going to give us some more mobility and more survivability after we use it. The Blinding Speed rune gives us 40% increased dodge chance for 4 seconds after using Dashing Strike. And of course we can have up to 2 charges. We are using Mana of Salvation Agility. This grants us more dodge chance as well as increase to resistances. And I am personally using Exalted Soul here. No, not Exalted Soul. That's not what I wanted. I had the wrong thing on. Transcendence is what I'm using right now. For the every point of spirit spent heals you. Because like I said in the very beginning, my sustain in my current build is not good at all. What you would probably go with instead of this, if you have plenty of sustain, is Seize the Initiative, dealing damage to enemies above 75% life, increases your attack speed. And this does actually affect to, like if you attack here, and then one of those that goes out there hits an enemy, that increases your attack speed as well. So it does keep you topped off on attack speed for quite a while. But for my particular version, because I'm not very tough right now, we're going with Transcendence. It is another viable option. We are also using the Sixth Sense. Reduce all non-physical damage taken by 25%. Again, this stacks really well with Esoteric. Harmony increases all of your single elemental resistances, or 40% of your single elemental resistances from items. Instead, increase your resist to all. I should probably just read these straight up because I mispronounce them sometimes. And then we are dual wielding, so we're using the Guardian's Path to increase our dodge chance by 35%. In the cube, we have a Incense Torch of the Grand Temple. Reduce the spirit cost of Wave of Light by 50% and increases damage by 550%. You could technically have this equipped, but then you wouldn't be able to have both of these, so you're really going to be missing out on a lot of damage from one or the other. Best to have this cubed and have these equipped, because once you have this equipped, it takes up both slots. And then we're using Spirit Guards. Your Spirit Generators reduce your damage taken now by 60% for 3 seconds. Very good. I mean, you could swap it out with Pento's Pride here and there, depending on which one you have rolled better. And then we're using a Ring of Royal Grandeur because we're only wearing 6 pieces. Or, we want the 6-piece bonus, but we're only wearing 5 pieces. For Paragon Points, movement speed is nice to get around. Maximum Spirit. When you're first doing this, max out Spirit first, then max out movement speed. If you want the movement speed, it's not completely required, so you can skip it if you want. And then dump everything into Dexterity unless you need more Vitality. Then, of course, put points into that. But definitely go with Maximum Spirit first because this is a Spirit-heavy build. For Paragon, or for offense, you want Critical Hit Chance, Damage, Attack Speed, and Cooldown Reduction. For defense, resist all, armor, life, and life regen. And in utility, you want life per hit, area damage, resource cost reduction, gold fine. In theory, you could probably put resource cost reduction first if you're really, really starving on this. And then go with life per hit or area damage. And again, if you go with this first and you're surviving okay, you can go with area damage second, life per hit third. It really just kind of depends on what gear you find, where you're at, here and there. Now, I have done, before they reset the leaderboard, so I guess I can't prove it, but I have done a 90 on this build with this gear, but it was really rough. It was really rough. My sustain basically is just not there. The damage is there, but with my critical hit chance being so low and my critical hit damage being so low, it's pretty rough. So for demonstration purposes, since we're just demonstrating the build, we're just going to run an 85. This build, as I showed you, is the top monk build right now, and I expect it will stay that way. And some people will be asking, why don't you run the Zay's Stone of Vengeance gem? And the reason being is because that is a ranged gem, and we do need to be in melee range to take full advantage of this build. You can say you can just swipe at the air and keep your spirit guards up, but you don't trigger your focus passive then, so you do actually have to hit something with that to trigger that. So we are using the focus and restraint version here, so we do need to be in melee range, but you do want to make sure that you stand in your Oculus ring as much as you can. Watch your little spirit guard cooldown. Depending on your attack speed, you'll get 4 or 5 of these off before you need to hit with a spirit generator again. And so it doesn't really matter if you're staying in there. When you get low on mana, when you get low on spirit, rather, pop your air ally to get that instant mana back, or that instant, I keep wanting to say mana. Normally I mess up and say fury, so I guess I'm half better. And again, remember, you do more damage when the initial impact hits only 3 or fewer units. So if you can, try and hit 3 or fewer units. But you definitely want to make sure every 3 seconds you're hitting a spirit generator. If you can on an enemy, if not, just hit it in the air so it triggers that. So in the air, again, will trigger your spirit guards, but it will not trigger your focus. So again, depending on your attack speed, you trigger it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Depending on your attack speed, you'll get 4 or 5 hits. If you're really decked out on attack speed, you might get 6 hits before you have to reset it. Keep in mind, though, if you go to the very edge of your attack speed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it will drop off for just a second before you refresh it. So be very careful. Now, your actual toughness in this build, especially after you use dash, is going to go up quite a bit. And again, I'm getting a decent amount of sustain from my which passive was that? I forget which. One of the passives, Exalted Soul or something. Oh no! That gives us sustain based on our spirit spent. And he's a shielder, so we're going to kind of move up here and see if he won't follow us a little bit. And he will. Just make sure you're using your spirit generator every 3 seconds. Because it's giving you a huge boost of defense, but it's also giving you damage from your focus ring. Again, this build can go much, much higher. I did if you want to see me do a 90 with this build, you can look back a few months ago when I was on the PTR with this build, and I had relatively better gear, and I did a 90 pretty easily with it. My live account has kind of suffered since the PTR came out. I ran out of... Oh, no! We were stuck. I ran out of all kinds of resources and everything, and yeah. Want to make sure we don't get stuck because we used our our dash there. I still feel like the dash is bugged, but maybe it's some kind of animation limitation where you hit dash in the middle of a fight and it takes a second. It certainly doesn't seem to work like other other characters do. And I'll be the first one to admit I'm not a super pro. Well, I'm not a super pro at any of these, but I'm definitely not a super pro at monk stuff, even though I do really enjoy playing the monk. And I haven't really had a chance to push a lot either lately. I noticed the leaderboards are back up. I was sick for a few days, and I didn't really get to play a whole lot for a few days. Between working on these builds and the he's a juggernaut. And the Warhammer campaigns. Now, the Warhammer campaigns are a little easier to do, to get up every day. The Diablo stuff takes some kind of planning because, like I said, I don't really have all the new gear on here, so I can't just hop in and, you know, I can't just hop in and do a video left and right. There's a lot of builds for a lot of characters that I'm missing missing some of the gear and the pieces, and I play for an hour or whatever trying to find it, and it just doesn't want to drop for me. There was something on this build like that. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but whatever it is in the cube, the staff in the cube, that hurts. Yeah, it took me a while to find that. And between the other campaigns and then other things going on, sometimes it just takes a little while to get a video up, unfortunately. I wish I had everything just ready for build guides and whatever and all that stuff. But you can see when we run out of spirit. Now that I've got the spirit rune on, we can attack a couple times with our spirit generator, and we generate spirit right back up pretty fast, even on a single target. Now, when you've got your build completely done and fully optimized, unless you forego cooldown reduction completely, which it's not really necessary in this build, but it is nice for your Mystic Ally active, and then it's nice for your dash. But you can completely forego it for more damage. But if you get a little bit of cooldown reduction, then you'll be a little bit better on, well, like I said, your dash and your Mystic Ally. And I didn't mean to actually pop it right there. So we'll just wail on him for a second. Generate our spirit back up. Don't really want to get hit by that. This was a decent rift, but again, it's just an 85. I mean, I probably could have done like an 88 pretty easily, but I wanted to make sure it was something that I could kind of explain and have time to, or be able to talk and play at the same time. Like I'm real good at that anyways. But yeah, like I said, with this gear, I have done a 90. If you want to see me do a 90, feel free to go about a month back, and when I talk about the buffs to this build, I think the build is labeled like top monk build on the PTR right now or something, so feel free to check that out. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and a comment, and subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you guys for watching. More good stuff to come. Take care.